There's a crispness in the air, and your footsteps echo on the cobblestones below. The hustle and bustle of tourists give this area an energy unmatched in other Toronto neighborhoods. Even though it's early spring, the warm sun has you looking for a patio where you can people watch and see the world go by. But before you tuck in some delicious seafood, you stop by the Spirits of York distillery. The glimmering open space has a stunning circular bar under a hovering live wall of herbs that will be used in future cocktails. Especially eye-catching are the chandeliers hanging above the entrance, made of bottles. You quickly take a tour of the operations and then sit down to sample a flight. As you peruse the menu of vodka and gin, made with ingredients found in Ontario, you notice a man dressed in a vintage-looking suit standing across a laneway, staring at you. That's odd, but you pay it no attention and go on to enjoy your beverage. After paying for your purchases, you step back out onto the pedestrian-friendly roads and walk towards the center square seating area where you stop to photograph Dennis Oppenheim's Still Dancing sculpture. The huge 38-foot art installation resembles either a whiskey still and a drop of liquid, or a man and a woman dancing. Oppenheim described it as, quote, a combination of sculpture, architecture, and theater, end quote, made of galvanized steel, powder-coated stainless steel, perforated metals, grating, LED lights, projector, and colored acrylic rod. As you're admiring the piece, you see the man in the vintage suit again, standing nearby, and you wonder if he's an actor or a tour guide. You keep walking and go past and under a massive green sign that has been in this location since 1862, when the company that bears its name made a quarter of all the spirits produced in Canada that year. You finally stop for lunch at a patio known for the fresh fish and oysters flown in from across North America and abroad every day, and is recognized as one of the best places for seafood in Toronto. After the menus are dropped off, you look up and see the strange man again, but this time he's standing just close enough for you to be frightened. Not because he's been following you and unknown to you, but because there's something not quite right about him. As you place your order, you can't help but feel like you've been stalked by a ghost. I'm Nadine Bailey, and this is Haunted Canada. Join me as we journey through the cobblestone streets of the Gooderham and Worts distillery. Located on Trinity Street in Toronto's historic distillery district, the 5-story limestone building was a favorite stop for those wanting to taste quality spirits. The former mill and distillery is 190 years old and played a vital role in transforming Toronto's waterfront. James Worts was born in Bungay Parish, Suffolk, England, to William Worts and Mary Murfield. He grew up working for his father's mill and then built one of his own in his hometown. Worts eventually moved to York, Upper Canada, with his eldest son, 13-year-old James Gooderham Worts. They made the 6-week-long journey by boat across the Atlantic Ocean and arrived in Montreal in May of 1831. Worts left his son behind in Montreal to attend school, although no details about where he lived or went to school survived. The father departed Montreal in search of a good location to support a windmill and found the ideal spot southeast of York at the mouth of the Don River. Once Worts had secured the location, he arranged for windmill equipment and parts to be shipped through the Great Lakes to the area that would one day become Toronto. Ultimately, this enormous task would fall to Worts' son, James, who at 13 had to collect 10 tons of equipment and ship it from Montreal to York, but only after he got the word from his father that the location had been finalized. When completed, it would be a 22-meter or 6-story high brick circular windmill similar to the ones built in Britain during the same period. Once the wooden cap and sail were hoisted into place, the windmill would have been one of the tallest buildings in a town of just under 4,000 people. During this time, Worts and his son were boarders in a house on Kingston Street, where Worts kept detailed records in his journal of the daily activities, and on November 26, 1831, he wrote, quote, "Finished tower. It took 105,000 bricks to build the mill, 216 bushels of lime, and 100 loads of sand," end quote. He employed 12 laborers to work on the windmill and recorded their levels of intoxication when he docked their pay. Some of the notes included, quote, "partial drunk, drunk half a day, sleepy drunk, dead drunk, and drunk as a David sow," end quote. Worts built it close to the shore, believing it to be the ideal place to catch the wind blowing across the bay. It was finally completed in 1832 and soon after provided flour for local bakers. That same year, his brother-in-law, William Gooderham, joined Worts in Upper Canada, along with the rest of Worts' family. Born in Scole, Norfolk, England, the son of James and Sarah Gooderham, William immigrated to invest and partner in his brother-in-law's wind-powered flour mill. The two men first met when William married James's sister, Elizabeth. Since both families would soon be arriving from England, Worts looked for larger accommodations in York. On March 29, 1832, he paid Reverend O'Grady £987 for a block of 3 1/4 acres, along with residence, on the north side of Kingston Road near Don Bridge. The Worts and Gooderham families arrived on Wednesday, July 25, 1832, along with several servants and 11 orphans Gooderham had adopted after they lost their parents on the dangerous voyage across the Atlantic. The group comprised of 54 people in total. With the brothers-in-law firmly in York, they got to work. Worts was the brains of the operation, with 20 years of experience as a miller, while Gooderham had the money to invest. The partners completed a trial run from October to December 1832, which proved they needed an auxiliary system engine, which was added in the spring of 1833. However, the first sale was recorded in October 1832 to King Street baker Robert Ferrier, which was sold in wooden barrels for about $5 each. Wheat and pollard, the unwanted leftover at the end of the process, was also sold. By 1833, the mill was prosperous, and they had sold 2,244 barrels of flour from grain acquired from Ontario farmers, and then shipped it out via the port of Toronto. One of their early customers, William Arthur, may have inspired Gooderham and Worts to do more. Arthur regularly bought meal, millings, rye, and malt, which led many to believe he was running a distillery in the town of York. Gooderham and Worts mulled with the idea of cutting out the middleman and taking on the operations themselves. And soon, Gooderham and Worts would become distillers. Meanwhile, they focused on the business. In 1834, the town of York would soon be incorporated to become the city of Toronto. And the city, business, and his family were booming. While James took care of things at the mill, his wife Elizabeth was pregnant with their 6th child. And with that many mouths to feed, he had to work hard. Sadly, the pregnancy proved to be difficult, and on February 8, 1834, Elizabeth died during childbirth. James Worth was overcome with grief. In one tragic day, he lost his wife and baby, and the calamities wouldn't end there. For 2 weeks, James Worts was inconsolable. He surely felt like there would be no end in sight for his suffering. On February 18th, 42-year-old James Worts lost his battle with despair and took his own life by throwing himself into the windmill's well. If the impact didn't irreparably harm him, he surely drowned soon after. He was buried alongside his wife and baby in St. James Cemetery in Toronto. William Gooderham was devastated not only by the death of his sister and the baby, but also by the loss of his brother-in-law and business partner. Through it all, he was determined to continue. Gooderham took complete charge of the business and assumed responsibility for his nephew, whom he trained to be his partner. In 1837, Gooderham expanded the business into brewing and distilling. He first added a small distillery to process the excess wheat. He was unaware then that that small innovation would change the course of history. Gooderham's first batch of whiskey included 36 bushels of wheat, 304 bushels of wheat millings, and 27 bushels of malt. It was the product of single distillation, unaged, and came in at 22% ABV, or alcohol per volume. On the very first day, Gooderham sold out. Joseph Lee, a grocer, was his first customer. The second day, the same grocer returned and bought out all of his stock. Clearly, there was a demand for his distilled spirits. It didn't take long for the entire business to shift to whiskey production. But as Gooderham entered into the hooch business, Upper Canada was thrown into 2 armed uprisings in 1837 and in 1838. Both rebellions were motivated by frustrations with the lack of political reform. Across the pond, 18-year-old Queen Victoria had just been crowned the British monarch, just as York was slowly becoming a city on the muddy shores of Lake Ontario. On top of it, Upper Canada had just survived a series of cholera epidemics that killed 20% of the population. Through the chaos, William Gooderham flourished, and under his guidance, James Gooderham Worts became his partner, and in 1845, they renamed the company as Gooderham and Worts. Gooderham's and Worts' success led to a new distillery complex in 1859 in what is today known as Toronto's Distillery District. The pair commissioned the building on the waterfront for $200,000, which at the time was the largest private undertaking in Upper Canada's history. The new 5-story distillery will be at the leading edge of industrial technology. They extended into the Grand Trunk Railway so they could bring in full-grain rail cars, which would pass through the entire system to become whiskey in barrels without the intervention by human hands. This meant that by their first full-year production in 1862, the facility made some 700,000 imperial gallons, or 3,180,000 liters of spirits. At the time, it was a full quarter of all spirits produced in Canada. That's a lot of alcohol. By 1877, Gooderham and Worts distillery was the largest in the world, producing over 2.5 million gallons of whiskey annually. At the time, the family-operated distillery provided more federal tax revenue to the Dominion Government of Canada, which was officially born on July 1, 1867, than any other enterprise. It led many to believe that Canada was truly built on whiskey, or so the company's website says. In the following decades, the distillery expanded and eventually merged with Hiram Walker to become Hiram Walker, Gooderham and Worts. Their empire expanded to sell grain alcohol for use and other products, such as vinegar, and they became one of the top acetone producers during World War I. They survived both the temperance movement and the Great Depression, yet sadly, after overcoming all these hurdles, the company eventually closed its doors in 1990. Today, the Distillery District is a National Historic Site on the east side of downtown Toronto, near Parliament and Front Street. It is one of the oldest neighborhoods in the city, and for over 190 years, it has had one constant resident. Many believe that James Worts never left. Over the years, there have been reports of doors opening and closing by themselves. Lights will turn on and off without reason, and the sound of heavy boots clumping on the cobblestone echo when no one else is there. On other occasions, people can hear strange hammering noises late at night. Staff at the distillery would check every corner of the building, but the source of the sound has never been found. In the 1990s, while many cities were tearing down their historic districts, private developers saw potential in the area. They turned the then empty buildings into a new pedestrian-only zone around 40 heritage buildings. Today, you can walk on cobblestone streets and enjoy craft breweries, art galleries, restaurants, artist shops, ghost tours, and historic atmosphere. Staff at the many restaurants and craft breweries report often feeling chilly even during the hot summer months. They believe it's Worts' ghost because he is commonly seen walking around in various locations. Employees and tourists will often spot a man dressed in what appears to be a dark suit from the late 1800s, standing on street corners, in restaurants, galleries, and theaters, just staring at people who are going about their business. Security guards working late at night have reported seeing the ghostly figure walking the streets of the distillery, carrying on a loud conversation with himself, which was something Worts was well known for. Even when Hollywood came knocking, his ghost was present. That's because the Distillery District is a popular location for films and television shows. Over 2,000 productions have been filmed there, including Cinderella Man, X-Men, Chicago, and one of my favorites, Road to Avonlea. Someone who worked on a show shared his strange encounters on torontoghosts.org in 2005. He said, quote, "I was working on a TV series filming in the fermentation cellar. I spent the day with the cast in the building across from the basement that had recently been an art gallery. The space was very long and narrow, running east to west. On the far western wall, there was a boarded-up exit. At the end of a 16-hour workday, I was talking to my coworkers when, to my left, I saw a man, as if he had just come through that exit door, but the door did not open. He walked to the first south-facing window and looked out. When I did a double take, he was gone. I had stopped talking mid-sentence and knew immediately that I had seen a spirit. He appeared to be in his 40s, wearing workman's clothes. I remember the boots." End quote. In 2010, a former restaurant employee shared his own experience. Quote, "I worked at the Boiler House restaurant for 3 years. It is divided into the main level and the upstairs mezzanine. A decorative wine rack shelving system extends to the ceiling on the restaurant's south wall. One evening before the dinner rush, I was in the mezzanine with my coworkers, polishing the silverware and glassware, until one of my coworkers completely froze up. The color dropped in her face, and she started trembling. I asked her, 'What's wrong? Are you okay?' And she looked me dead in the eye, pointed towards the wine rack shelf, and said, 'Do you not see that?' I looked over, noticed nothing unusual, and said, 'No. What do you see? What is it?' She responded, 'A man is hanging by his neck above the bar.' She packed up all of her things and left. I haven't seen her since." Another time, during a full dinner rush, another peculiar thing happened. That shelf wine rack was about 3 feet tall. During the dinner rush, one of the customers from upstairs shouted, "Watch out!" I was on the ground floor at the time, looked over, and saw the bottle mid-flight fly off the shelf. I've never seen anything like it. The bottle flew away from the shelf, perpendicular to it about 4 feet, then dropped straight down and landed flat on the bar. It didn't break, didn't wobble, just landed." End quote. And the ghosts aren't only human. On other occasions, people have seen the ghosts of cats wandering throughout. They are the spirits of the cats from the 18th and 1900s that kept mice from eating the grain. Cat lovers believe their spirits are still present throughout the historic buildings. However, there's no word on there being ghosts of mice to keep the kitties entertained. Toronto's Distillery District is a National Historic Site, as well as one of the city's most haunted locations. So the next time you're in the area, stop by and walk along the cobblestone streets and admire the limestone buildings. But don't be surprised if you see a man in an 1800s suit staring at you. It's just one of the neighborhood's oldest residents. Thank you for joining me on this tour through the Gooderham and Worts distillery. The Edmonton Ghost Tours sponsors Haunted Canada. I will link it in the show notes. Haunted Canada is written and produced by me, Nadine Bailey, with senior producer, Dila Velasquez. Production and sound design is by Rob Johnson, with help from Rosin Kufer. If you would like to support this podcast, please follow and share, and we would also appreciate a like and a 5-star written review. Also, you can follow me on our different social media platforms, or if you have a ghost story, haunting, or true crime that you would like for us to cover on this podcast, please email me through the website hauntedcanada.com. Thank you from all of us at Haunted Canada and Curious Cast. Have a good night, everyone, and stay haunted.